Namaste viewers. I hope you're all hale and hearty. I'm Anupreet Kaur and I have here with me Miss Jyotsna. We are both from the Chandigarh Education Department. As promised earlier, we are back with another video. Dear learners, literature is food for the soul. We enjoy all the genres of literature, be they prose, poetry or drama, be they short stories or novels. What is it that makes literature so interesting? It is the literary devices. And yet, some of us cannot understand a lot of these literary devices. That is why we have brought out this video which will help us understand them better. This will prepare you for your exams as well as for your higher education. And most of all, you'll find this video very handy throughout your life so that you can enjoy literature, you can relish it as you understand it better. With these poetic devices and these literary devices, you can become good critics of literature and great writers too. So let's study some literary devices today. The first literary device that we will take up is rhyme. Words which end with the same sound are rhyming words. Rhyme depends on sound, not spelling. For example, lair, wear, share, blare, stare. Here, smear, sheer, dear, dear. So, go, do, show, no. So here we can see that the rhyme has depended on sound and not the spellings. The next literary device we've taken up is rhyme scheme. Rhyme scheme is the pattern of sounds that repeat at the end of the line of the stanza. The patterns are encoded by the letters of the alphabet. Lines designated with the same letter rhyme with each other. Example, in the poem How to Tell Wild Animals, we'll take up a stanza from this poem. If when you're walking round your yard, you meet a creature there who hugs you very, very hard, be sure it's a bear. If you have any doubts, I guess, he'll give you just one more caress. If we take up the last word in the first line, it is yard. We will assign it the code A. In the second line, the last word is there. There does not rhyme with yard, so we will assign it the code B. The last word in the third line is hard. Hard rhymes with yard, so this will also be assigned the code A. The last word in the fourth line is bear. Bear rhymes with there, so this will be assigned the code B. The last word in the fifth line is guess. Guess does not rhyme with any of the words that we have taken up above, so we will assign it the code C. The last word in the sixth line is caress. Caress rhymes with guess, so this will also be assigned the code C. Thus, the rhyme scheme of this stanza is A, B, A, B, C, C. The next literary device is free verse. Free verse is a poem which does not have a rhyme scheme. It does not have a pattern of line and meter. For example, we will take up the poem Wind. Wind comes softly. Don't break the shutters of the windows. Don't scatter the papers. Don't throw down the books on the shelf. There, look what you did. You threw them all down. You tore the pages of the book. Now here we see that the last words do not rhyme with each other at all. The last word of the first line is softly. The last word of the second line is windows. They don't rhyme with each other. The last word of the third line is papers. of the fourth line is shelf, of the fifth line is down, and of the sixth line is books. None of these words rhyme with each other. So we can say that this poem is written in free verse, since it does not have a rhyme scheme. The next literary device is alliteration. Alliteration is the occurrence of the same sound at the beginning of adjacent or closely connected words in a line. For example, we will take up the poem Amanda. In this, we see alliteration in the line, "Stop that slouching and sit up straight." The s sound is repeated here. And in the poem Wind, we have alliteration again, "Though as far as the passing there." Here, the sound is repeated. The next literary device we'll take up is assonance. It is the repetition of a vowel sound in words set close to each other in a line, though it is not at the beginning of words. For example, in the poem The Road Not Taken, we see though as for that, the passing. Here, the sound is repeated. Somewhere ages and ages hence, here the e sound is repeated. Another literary device here is consonance. Consonance is the repetition of consonant sound in words set close to each other in a line, though it is not at the beginning of words. For example, in the poem The Road Not Taken, we can read this line, "Two roads diverged in a yellow wood." Here, the d sound is repeated. And in the poem Wind, "Don't scatter the papers." Here, the t sound as well as the r sound are repeated. The next literary device we take up is repetition. It is the repetition of a word or a phrase for poetic effect. For example, in the poem Wind, we can read, "Frail crumbling houses, crumbling doors, crumbling rafters, crumbling wood, crumbling bodies, crumbling lives, crumbling hearts." See the number of times the word crumbling is repeated here. Another example is the poem Amanda. The name Amanda is repeated several times to emphasize the restrictions imposed on her. The words don't, stop, and did are repeated to emphasize the theme of control. The next literary device we take up is refrain. Refrain is also a form of repetition. It is a line or a group of lines which are repeated in the course of a poem. A refrain is usually used at the end of each stanza. For example, in the poem The Duck and the Kangaroo, "Said the duck to the kangaroo." In this, the sentence "said the duck to the kangaroo" was repeated at regular intervals. It is different from repetition because here the repetition is being done at regular intervals. The next literary device we take up is simile. A simile is a device used to compare things with familiar things to let the readers know it easily. These things may be distinctly different but have some common quality. The comparison between the two things is indicated by the word like or as. In the poem The Road Not Taken, we see the simile as just as fair. It shows how the poet has linked the road less taken to the easy way through life. Another example we see is in the poem A Legend of the Northland. Black as a coal. The black color of burnt clothes of the woman are mentioned here. The next literary device we take up is metaphor. It is a comparison between two or more things that are not alike but do have something in common. The poet does not make an indirect comparison, but states the quality of another object as if it is being possessed by the object being discussed. It is a figure of speech that compares two or more things with a similar quality and does not use like or as. One thing is said to be another. For example, in the poem Amanda, we see, silence is golden. Here, silence is as precious as gold. Freedom is sweet. Here, freedom is said to be sweet in taste. Another example of metaphor is from the poem The Road Not Taken. There are many metaphors in this poem, like the road, the fork in the road, and yellow woods. The road in the poem is the metaphor for life. The fork on the road metaphorically represents the choices we make to determine the course of our lives. Yellow woods are the metaphor of making decisions during the hard times of a person's life. The next device that we take up is transferred epithet. It is a poetic device or a literary device in which the adjective is transferred from the noun it is meant to describe to another noun. For example, in the poem Rain on the Roof, we see the words melancholy darkness. The quality of sadness or melancholy is used for people, but here it is assigned to darkness. The next literary device we will discuss is personification. It is a literary device in which human characteristics are given to animals or plants or non-living things. For example, in the poem How to Tell Wild Animals, the poet has used he instead of it for the animals. So he is used for human beings. For animals, we generally use it. Next literary device we have here is hyperbole. It is a figure of speech which uses extreme exaggeration. For example, I'm so hungry I could eat a horse. And in the poem Aunt Jennifer's Tigers, we see the poet has written massive weight of uncle's wedding band. Now, a little wedding band which is worn on the finger cannot be all that heavy. But here the poet has used massive weight for the wedding band. Allusion is another literary device which is very interesting. Allusion is an implied or indirect reference to a person, event, or thing, or to a part of another text. Most allusions are based on the assumption that there is a body of knowledge that is shared by the author and the reader, that therefore the reader will understand the author's referent. For example, in the poem How to Tell Wild Animals, there is an allusion to the Asian lion and Bengal tiger. In the poem Amanda, there is an allusion to mermaid and Rapunzel. A mermaid is a mythical sea creature who is a half woman and half fish. Rapunzel is a character from a fairy tale. The next literary device we take up is inversion. In this, the normal order of words is reversed. For example, in the poem How to Tell Wild Animals, the format of the sentence has been changed. When the poet writes, "And if there should to you advance." The next literary device here is anaphora. Anaphora is the use of same word in the beginning of two consecutive lines. For example, in the poem Amanda, the writer writes, Don't bite your nails, Amanda. Don't hunch your shoulders, Amanda. So here, both these lines have started with the same word, don't. Another example is in the poem Song of the Rain. The voice of thunder declares my arrival. The rainbow announces my departure. Both these lines, which are consecutive, start with the word the. The next poetic device we have here is enchantment. It is the continuation of a sentence from one line to another without any punctuation at the end of the line. For example, in the poem A Legend of the Northland, the stanza is such that they tell them a curious story I don't believe it's true, and yet you may learn a lesson if I tell the tale to you. The sentence continues in the last two lines. There is no comma, full stop, or any other punctuation mark after the word lesson. Nor is there any punctuation mark at the end of the first line after the word story. So the first line continues into the second without a punctuation mark. The third line continues into the fourth without any punctuation mark at the end of it. Thus, this is an example of enjambment. Another example here is in the poem How to Tell. Another example of enjambment is here in the poem How to Tell Wild Animals. And if there should to you advance a large and tawny beast, there is no punctuation at the end of the line after advance. The next literary device here is symbolism. Symbolism is a figure of speech in which an object, person, or situation has another meaning other than the literal one. It has a deeper meaning in context of the poem. For example, in the poem Fire and Ice, fire symbolizes desire and human emotions like fury, cruelty, greed, etc. Ice symbolizes hatred with cold feelings like rigidity, jealousy, indifference, intolerance, etc. Imagery is a very important literary device. Imagery means the sensory experience of creating a picture with words. A reader can visualize with imagination what the poet has written about. For example, when we read the poem Amanda, there is a languid emerald sea where the sole inhabitant is me, a mermaid drifting blissfully. We can actually visualize the mermaid floating and drifting in the emerald-colored sea. In the poem Dust of Snow, the way a crow shook down on me the dust of snow from a hemlock tree. Here again, we can really visualize the crow shaking the tree and the dust of snow coming down on the poet. The next literary device we've taken up is onomatopoeia. The use of words which suggest their meanings when pronounced. They are sound words. For example, words like hiss, fizz, growl, tinkle. An example of this is used in the poem Rain on the Roof. The word patter. Now, patter is the sound made by raindrops when they fall on the roof. The poet has also used the word tinkle when the raindrops fall on the shingles. The next literary device we take up is pun. Pun is a literary device in which a word has a literal meaning and a figurative meaning. It is a play on words. For example, the cat is near the computer to keep an eye on the mouse. So now the mouse has a double meaning. The writer could be talking about a real mouse or the mouse of the computer. Another example is the vacuum sucks. Now, literally, the vacuum does suck out the dust. And figuratively, the vacuum sucks means the vacuum is not in good condition. Antithesis is the next literary device we take up. This poetic device pairs opposite or contrasting ideas adjacent to each other. For example, the poem Fire and Ice. Fire is the antithesis of ice, and yet we read about them together. Another example is in the poem Song of the Rain. The voice of thunder declares my arrival. The rainbow announces my departure. So arrival and departure are opposite and contrasting ideas which are studied quite adjacent or close to each other in this poem. Meaning of arrival is to come and departure means to go. The opposite words here are in close placement. Oxymoron is the next literary device. An oxymoron is where seemingly opposite words are placed together to create a unique word or phrase. For example, virtual reality, old news, deafening silence, bitter sweet. So these words are actually quite opposite to each other, and yet they are placed together to form the oxymorons. The next literary device we take up is rhetorical question. It is asked for special effect, not because someone is expecting an answer to it. For example, in the poem Childhood, the poet says, "Where did my childhood go?" The next literary device we take up is synecdoche. It is a figure of speech in which a part represents a whole or a whole represents a part. For example, do a head count. The head represents the whole person. Man is mortal. Man represents all human beings. He asked for her hand in marriage. He wants to marry her in totality, not just the hand. One may be using the word society, but only be referring to high society. Dear learners, I hope you have enjoyed this video and learned from it as well. Although most of the examples that I have taken here are from poetry, these literary devices apply to all the genres of literature. I hope they come handy to you in your life. I hope they have made you well equipped to be good critics and great writers too. Dear learners, if you have any kind of doubts or queries, you can put them in the comment section and we shall get back to you. Till then, stay happy, stay safe and enjoy learning.